Golf's.
Join 5 Live and 5 Live Sports Extra for the US Open. Sends it into the cup. Everyone's standing, roaring around the 18th green.
What an amazing story this is.
This year, the championship is being held at the stunning Pebble Beach Links on the Californian coast as the biggest names in the golfing world line up to take on this legendary course.
The best players in the world are up there trying to win a US Open.
Just brushes it. Oh, yes!
US Open Golf.
Coverage starts Thursday on 5 Live and 5 Live Sports Extra.
Must listen on the Sarah Brett Show
On 5 Live.
It certainly is, and thank you very much for being with us. It is the early hours, the wee small hours of the morning, 5 minutes past midnight. I'm Sarah Brett. It is our weekly look at the best podcasts out there, and tonight we are looking at episodes that fall under the banner of great conversations. Podcast coach and creator Clare Freeman is here to take us through them. So I'm just going to apologise for the series of strange sounds that people will have experienced then. Me knocking the microphone, smashing the TV monitor, and intermittently throughout the course of this evening's programme, the door of this 5 Live studio crashing shut. The door is broken.
I like the way that the sign's on the other side that says leave quietly, because when I came in, I should have probably read the sign that was the other side of it.
Also, the sign is in font like 6 or something. So, you know, you're like 8 pairs of glasses on to even
This is
read it.
real, people.
This is the
This
real
live.
stuff. So sorry, guys, that it's a bit loud. Every now and then you'll hear a crash, bang, wallop. Our door's broken. Claire, it's lovely to have you with us. Your first choice, Beyond the Grid. A bona fide national treasure at the helm of this.
Yeah.
The one and only Murray Walker.
There's so many different episodes of this where Tom Clarkson, the host, takes a different, instrumental name in the F1 kind of history. But this one really jumped out at me. It's a little bit older now, so it's not one of the more recent ones. But this year I've really got into Formula One. I've just been following it now. Don't tell me what happened in the Canadian Grand Prix, because I'm only halfway through the highlights, because it's late, wasn't it, last night? The highlights were on.
Really? We're going to do spoiler alerts for the Grand Prix?
I'm trying not to listen
So
to
the whole
hear
Sebastian Vettel thing.
Thanks for that.
But all I said
Spoiler
was
alert.
the whole Sebastian Vettel thing. You don't know what that is.
Okay.
You
So
wait-
I've
you
not
wait-
watched the end, but I've got into F1 podcasts because I'm really trying to learn about it. You're talking about, binge watching. I binge watched the F1 Drive to
Yes,
Survive.
yeah.
Anyway, this is Beyond the Grid was just one of many podcasts that are out there. Checkered Flag is obviously the one for the BBC. But this episode with Murray Walker, we all grew up listening to Murray Walker do commentary for F1 Sunday afternoons with a Sunday dinner with my family, jelly and ice cream for afterwards, sat colouring in, watching the F1 with Murray Walker. But I didn't know that he's 95 years old, that he was a motorbike racer when he, way before he was a commentator. And I just thought that this was exactly that type of conversation, not really even an interview, where you really truly got to understand how this man kind of ticked, and the fact that he's so switched on that it took me on like a journey that I just wasn't not expecting. And that's what I love about podcasts, that unlike radio, there isn't like the junctions, you don't have to stop or pause for the news. There's just, it is as long as it's
Stream of
going to be.
consciousness, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd have just lost myself listening to this. Really enjoyed it.
And there are so many great things that he used to be legendary. In fact, they used to do it every year, the Murray Walker bloopers, where he would, put the mockers on somebody, basically say, he's got a clear run now. He's got a clear windscreen.
Mary Talker.
And then...
That was it, wasn't it?
That was one
his
of them.
nickname. I'm sure my dad used to say that, Mary Talker.
Mary Talker. Well, there you go. This is him talking about his attempts to make it in the world of motorcycle racing.
Did you ever want to race yourself?
Tom, I'm surprised at you asking a question
Well, I
like
know
that,
you did do a bit.
Because I did actually race motorcycles.
I did know that.
And I retired at the height of my success after I had won a 250cc heat at Brands Hatch, when Brands Hatch was a grass track which ran anti-clockwise. And that was the time when John Surtees was a youngster racing with his father, Jack, and Jack rode the bike and John Surtees rode in the sidecar. And then I took up enduros on motorcycles, 6-day motorcycle events.
Where did they take place?
Pardon?
Where did they take place, these enduros? In the UK?
I rode in the International 6 Days trial in Llandrindod Wells it was based, and we went charging about all over Wales. And the Scottish 6 Days trial, I rode in that, got awards in both of them. And I was fairly reasonable, Tom. I was fair to good club standard, but I knew that I was never going to be as good as my father. I started off with delusions of grandeur that I was really going to show the old man how a motorcycle ought to be ridden. And I very rapidly discovered that I wasn't. And you know what they say, those that can do, and those that can't talk about it.
It's great, isn't it? I just had no idea that, I suppose in my head, you often think of someone like Murray Walker that he doesn't age really, because it's the voice. And, you know, I think if he walked past me in the street, I would have no idea who he was, because it was just the voice. And it's so powerful, isn't it, in the industry that we both work in, how you know, voices really stand out to you. And I think that's something that is also quite unique about podcasts as well, that this idea of not really interviews, but these curious conversations, and how intimate they are, because a lot of us listen to podcasts with our headphones on, and we're kind of opting into this world. We join this tribe. Like they say that the average podcast listener subscribes to 6 different series. That's like the kind of the geekery, and often they're about the similar subjects or similar niches. So yeah, it's crazy. But the next one I've got for you, another conversations one, and it's called Conversations.
Yes, ABC.
Thought that
radio
made that simple for you, right?
Yes, it's very good. So give us an idea about this one.
So we often find a lot of the big guys, we do it here at the BBC as well, will repackage interviews or, you know, little offcuts, longer versions of things into podcast series. And that's what ABC Radio did with this. The host, Richard, it just gives you kind of longer versions. And this one jumps out at me because I'd never really thought about it in how do they record the sound for things like Planet Earth and Our Planet. You know, we all just kind of watch the beautiful pictures, don't we, and coo at the little baby penguins. But we never really think about how do they get the mics there and how much planning does that. And so this conversation, this particular episode I picked out was with Chris Watson from Peak District. And he talks about how he kind of became fascinated with his job that turned into being a sound recordist. Things like, you know, recording the sound of a caterpillar coming out, you know, as a butterfly of its cocoon, and birds on the bird table, getting his kids involved to that. A new level of geekery. But the way that the podcast had been put together, that headphone experience that I was like kind of talking about, that you really get to, like you're reading a great book, close your eyes and feel like you're there and you're picturing and really closed in, magnified to what these sounds are. It's really fascinating.
Well, let's listen to it right now. This is Chris Watson talking about his very first foray into recording nature.
When I was in my early teens, I think I was something like, I might have been 12, 13 or even 14, my parents, back in Sheffield, where I was born and grew up, bought me a small portable reel-to-reel tape recorder, a national reel-to-reel tape recorder, which I've still got on my shelf in my studio. And so this had little spools on it and a microphone on a meter's cable. So it was unasked for, this gift, and it was either my birthday or Christmas. And so I explored the house. You know, I recorded my mum, I recorded the doors creaking, I recorded my dad moving around the house, and the taps and the toilet and the bathroom. And then we had in our back garden, we had a bird table, and we'd had this actually quite flashy double glazed, this is in the 1960s, this double glazed unit put in the kitchen that my mum had always wanted. And so it framed the bird table in the back garden. And I don't know where it came from, but I had the idea that looking out from the kitchen to the bird table and seeing the birds feeding on the table was really interesting and engaging, but it was like a silent film, and I just wanted to know what it sounded like. And I realised this little tape recorder had batteries in it. So I ran outside with some bird food and frightened all the birds off, and put the seed and the bread out, put my little microphone on the table, set the recorder going, then ran back in the house and watched. And the robins and the blackbirds and the blue tits and the thrushes came back and started feeding. And I could see the wheels going round on this little tape recorder. It was so exciting. And then the tape ran out, so I ran back out and frightened all the birds off again. And then brought this tape back. And I mean, I like to think I can remember that moment of playing those sounds back and being taken to a world where we can never be, this magical world, because our presence changes the behaviour. And I could hear in fine detail all these conversations that these birds were having, and I realised it wasn't a silent world, it was this magical place where it was very sound rich, and that really was the moment.
Oh, you have to listen to it.
You're right there, aren't you?
We've kind of held back the actual sound of it. You have to listen to the episode to actually hear that sound. And that inspired me actually on one of the podcasts I make with a satellite company in Luxembourg, that we use the sounds of satellite tones when they were being killed off and sent to space. And we kind of narrated around this kind of archive that we'd found of the sounds recorded in the control room the moment that satellites were killed, and it was all as a result of me being inspired.
What does a satellite being killed sound like?
Well, actually, the engineer described it as bird chirps. And when he said there were 3 types of bird chirps. It was like kind of binary code 1, 0, and then a little other execute sound. It's hard to use words to describe that, isn't it? But yeah, who'd have thought that a satellite dying would sound like bird chirps? So
made its own sound. And he's done a series as well. Chris Watson also, which I didn't realise until just now. Not only is he a sound recorder specialising in natural history, he's also a founding member of Cabaret Voltaire, who are a pretty extraordinary band. But he has done another series with The Guardian. What's that called?
So it's called Oceans of Noise. It's on my to listen to. So maybe when I come back, we might add that in my next must listen. So yeah, I've got that one to download. I think it's 2 or 3 parts, that one. So that'll be fascinating. I think he's just a really interesting guy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the Conversations one is hosted by Richard Fiddler, is that right? Yeah. Okay, great. Your third one tonight, Claire, this is about death.
Yeah, completely different, right? I thought I'd give you a plethora of different topics about death. Okay, instantly you kind of think, eek, not sure I'm ready for that. And that's the point of the podcast, actually. Sam Michael, who hosts it, talks about, in a first episode, it's a monologue of why she's kind of come to do this podcast, and how the death of a friend close to her, where she felt like she didn't get to say goodbye, and that fear around some of her relatives, that the time may come for them, and what would that be like, life without them. And it had inspired her in her own professional work and personal life to kind of find ways to have conversations with people before it was too late.
Right.
And what I haven't managed to get through an episode of this without crying. Not necessarily from sadness, but also from realising the love that you have for the people who are here now, and that you get to enjoy them, and also the people who have passed, that the effect that they had on you, and kind of being grateful that you had that time with them. So it's kind of one of those deep thinkers, which I like to kind of have those when I'm driving long journeys, to be honest. And this particular episode I picked out was a lady who works in the NHS, but one of her jobs is to be a clown in a children's ward, where some of the children's outlook is not looking that great. So she is a moment of just like a breath of fresh air for them, and lifts their spirits. So she talks about her job, but also about her own understanding of death, and what she's kind of discovering with people, seeing these children, these families in this kind of really difficult time. And just some amazing quotes, which I think are in the clip that we're about to play, that just make you kind of stop from this busy life that we all lead and just remember what's important to us. It really moved me.
Keeping thinking I should have done more puts me in a negative situation, but also negative frame of mind, but also in a probably like a very pretentious mindset where I think I could control everything. I can't really. We are just a piece in this big jigsaw and in the universe. And so, but I can do much more in in the puzzle now for the people I'm, with now. So I guess it's incredible that we came around the concept of death as an opportunity to live more, to laugh more, to enjoy more, to bond more, to hug more. It's just incredible, which brings you to the fact that death is the final. In fact, what we were saying before, death is the final destination, but actually here is about the journey. It's not about the result, which we are constantly bombarded by, this performance society. You have to be cool, you have to be successful. But what is success to you? What is, happiness to you? It can be anything, but it's that thing about the clown. It's key in this. So failure is just another way to look at an experiment, I guess. It's just one outcome of an experiment, and that's perfectly fine.
It's very touchy, isn't it? It's been something that's been on your mind a lot as well in the last few weeks.
Yeah, we're in a situation where here at BBC Media City, we've lost 3 colleagues to cancer in the space of 6 months, and they're under 50 years old. And that is just one of those things where it really makes you stop and think, oh my goodness, life is short and we've got to be precious. And you do go home and you kind of want to keep people who are close to you a little bit closer, don't you? And not to be afraid of these things. But that phrase that really stuck out for me with that episode with Sarah was to see death as an opportunity to live more. Really moved me. And I listen to so many different podcasts. I guess the nature that it is my job as well, and I consume it in lots of different ways, from branded podcasts to Formula One podcasts to these conversations. And I always look for podcasts that do a couple of things. Do they move me? Do they surprise me? Do they shock me? I want to hear those kind of moments. I want to get something out of it. And that was just one of those series that there are those magical moments that we have in audio where you walk away from listening, all films as well, and books, where you remember these things because we consume, we talk about binge watching. My God, yeah, I've done plenty of that, and binge listen to podcasts as well. But there are some why did that one at that particular time stick with me? Why did the words of that particular moment in that episode or that podcast stay with me? And sometimes it's about listening to something at the right time, at the right place. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, indeed, because it's all about this, the way you make it. It makes you feel. It's like, how is it possible that you could have listened to that one album so many times when you were 20 years old or whatever?
Yeah.
But you did, and then you go back to it when you're 40-odd years old, and you still think, well, that's absolutely brilliant. But it's all about a time and a place, and it speaks to you of that moment and the people that you're with. From the sublime to the, well, who knows? Love Island, the morning after.
I told you I put a plethora. Right? So the one thing that I thought, there's so many TV programs now that are doing these kind of spin-off podcasts, right? And one of the key leaders in this last year was the Love Island Morning After podcast, that they kind of started it. I'm sure I read somewhere that they just wanted 1 million listens to this podcast series by the end of the series. So what the series is like 8 weeks long, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they got that in the first week or 2 weeks. And it really started to kind of get a lot more people in this country excited about podcasts, right? And then now we see Strictly Come Dancing. How many Game of Thrones blooming podcasts are there? Because everybody kind of wants to talk about it. And when you're hooked into that kind of world, you do want to kind of get any inside gossip that you can. So this is one that I've kind of put back on the daily subscription list. And I like doing all the deep, intelligent kind of stuff. I make some hardcore podcasts about really serious subjects, but every so often I need a bit of escapism. And I have not watched, after you've just given me the Formula One, okay, now don't tell me what happened in Love Island tonight, because I've not seen that episode because I was too busy getting ready for you. So no spoilers on that.
I was on there, so almost on there, so you're fine. I haven't seen it at all, so we're all good.
I'm not looking at any texts or tweets.
Let's get a flavour of the latest episode, then have a listen.
What did you think of last night's episode as a whole?
As a whole, it was a bit
I would like a bit more excitement, but it was good to kind of see the aftermath of Molly May really bedding down.
What do you mean more excitement? Like, as in like a bit more drama?
Yeah, a little bit more drama and a little bit more, do you know, can I be a bit pervy here? I want to see a little bit more action.
Yeah,
I say that all the time, and I always get told off. But let's get stuck. Let's get stuck in now. So let's start with Yuande and Danny. So firstly, Yuande, every time she gets a text, I've never seen so much excitement. And do you know what? It was weird. It reminded me, first time since I've watched the show, it reminded me how excited people get when they get a text. You wait all day and then out of the blue, the phone goes off and you're just being told you're out, you're on a date or you're going out for a challenge. It reminds me how exciting it is.
But doesn't that like respond to like real life as well? Like, as in like when you get a text from someone you've been waiting for or someone you like have been thinking about out of the blue and you're like, it's like so true to life, isn't it? Is that just me? Is that just me?
No, mate.
No, imagine not. I'm putting a message out there to any man who wants to text me. That would be ideal. No, I'm kidding on. It's fine.
No, I was going to say the same thing. If anyone texts me in this day and age, I'll be like, I've got a text.
I just apologise to anybody who was just dropping off to sleep. Thank God, that's the wonderful Lauren Mann. Who else is co-presenting that with her?
So Kem, who was in Love Island a couple of series ago, and Ariel. So that Kem and Ariel did it last year. Now they've got guests in. So it's great to hear Lauren from You, Me and the Big C. They've kind of got lots of different guests who are kind of hardcore Love Island fans. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. I think there's something quite fun when there's no agenda. You know, the thing with some of these podcasts is there is no agenda. It is just people talking about one specific thing. And it's amazing where that really kind of takes off. I mean, like some of the passion podcasts that I do, there's one where I met a guy here on a night shift, actually, who is a fan of Toronto Maple Leafs, as am I. I'm a big ice hockey fan. It's currently the Stanley Cup finals right now. And we met, didn't know each other. 10 days later, started a podcast, and we've been doing one weekly ever since.
Wow.
And we called it NHL Fans from Afar because we were crazy people who loved the NHL but didn't live in North America. And then as a result, we've had people from Taiwan, Poland. We even had an Australian who said he had to turn his aircon on full whack just to be able to watch on telly all these hockeys that were like, you know, outside snow, wearing his jersey and his cap because it was too hot outside. So it's incredible where sometimes these things take you.
Yeah.
And another series that I did, which is just conversations on park benches, in coffee shops, in pubs, with a friend who also does Slimming World with me.
Yeah,
and,
so what's been happening with that? Because you've been getting some unbelievable emails from listeners.
Yeah, so I've been following Slimming World now for about 7 years, on and off. But not January this year, last January, I decided to really go for it, and I've lost 5 stone.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's extraordinary.
So big transformation. And Anna, who co-hosts it with me, is actually my consultant. She was on a trampoline and actually broke her spine and was bedbound and lost 4 stone to reduce her BMI without moving. Following Slimming World, that worked for her, and was able to have her spine reconstructed. Has gone on to now become a consultant. And what we really felt that whilst we were going through our own weight loss journey, that there were a lot of podcasts that were from health experts telling us what to do, but there were very few people who were going through the weight loss journey to really talk about the things that no one talks about.
Like what?
Oh gosh, what can I say on radio? You put me on the spot. Clothes, like the expensiveness of clothes when you lose weight, and
You have to buy a whole new wardrobe.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, and especially like 5 stones a decent.
Yeah,
a
there's
decent amount
no
of
putting a
sizes.
belt round that.
No.
You're going to have to get a whole new set of stuff.
Yeah, but then also about the other things, you know, some of the root causes of why people come to put on weight. And that's where, as a result of us kind of telling our own stories and opening up about, I'm someone that has suffered from depression. I've worked night shifts. I work very erratic kind of lifestyle. And that came at a cost for me. And that was a big reason as to why I ended up using food as comfort. And by us telling their stories and being very upfront and honest that we have had therapy and been on antidepressants, people have reached out to us. And the things that they tell us are things that they're not actually talking to their best friends or even their husbands about, because they feel like we're friends. And that kind of intimacy that comes from the community aspect around a podcast is so unique, because I've worked in radio now for 17 years and I've never experienced that kind of intimacy that you get from something like a podcast. It's not always about quality, it's about your vulnerability, your honesty, and taking your listeners like on that journey with you. That is quite magical. So it's a whole new learning game for me.
What's that one called, Claire? Your one? The Slimming World Food for Thought.
Yeah, I mean, we're an unofficial podcast. Yeah. We're the only Slimming World podcast that actually, out there talking about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're in the top 100 of health podcasts at the moment for Apple Podcasts. So we're it's kind of
good going.
One of those that's just some of them go, don't they? And some of them don't. And that's just how it is. But
I'm very glad that you found the time to come in here and talk to us tonight, because you're clearly very busy. You've got a lot going on. Remind us of your other choices this evening.
So we had F1's Beyond the Grid. We had ABC Radio's Conversations. We had About Death podcast. And the little cheeky one that snuck in, Love Island's Morning After.
Yes, indeed. And another great one that I know you love is Bud Pod podcast. And we've been speaking to the comedian Pierre Novelli, who's one half of that. And you can hear my interview with him after the news and sport. Clare Freeman, thanks so much. Lovely to have you on the programme.
Sarah.
Cheers. It's midnight.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
And watch the door on your way out. We've all been doing it. Kaboom. James Wickham has the news.
Thank you. The campaign for the Conservative leadership is officially underway. 10 candidates will face a first round of voting on Thursday. Pensioners